Hello guys, this is your friend and we are back with a new fanfic. Which is what if Emperor Naruto rules the world and has two wives? Part 2. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. Naruto didn't know how it came to this, but he was standing at the gates of Suna, with Temari beside him, Gaara holding out his right hand. The man who was going to become Godime Kazekage was being guarded by a man he learned to be Baki, the man who has been the sensei of the Sand siblings since they were young. He was their sensei when they went to Konoha for their Chunin exams and he was helping Gaara prepare for his role as Kazekage. When he informed them he would be leaving, he was told to wait for a day. They would make preparations to send Temari to Konoha so that she could inform the village of Gaara's appointment. She was the one who would be handling dialogues between the two villages. Naruto had waited. Gaara had asked him. I was just a single day anyway. There was no smile on Gaara's lips when Naruto shook his hand. I hope you come again soon to visit us, Naruto. I will try to make time. Naruto said. It wouldn't be any time soon. He was going back to his journey. His training with Jiraiya, and once he was satisfied, he would think about Konoha and what he had to do. There was no hurry to go back. He was content as things were and the Sannin training him wasn't complaining either. You will always be welcome. You have been a good friend. Gaara said. Please take care of my sister along the way. This time, Naruto smiled. I will try to do that, but she is plenty strong, he said, eyeing the blonde sister of the Kazekage. For some reason, Temari looked annoyed. Come on, we don't want the sun to set while in the desert. She said to Naruto. I will be safe, Gaara. You don't have to worry. Baki shook his head. You really have to be careful, Temari. There are elements within the hidden leaf that don't like the fact that things are being done this way. You never even know that other forces are watching. Someone might just decide to do something just to make sure that Suna and Konoha never become allies. Naruto could understand what the man was saying. Dangerous creeps were always lying in the shadows, and it was truly interesting that the man was willing to say in front of him, a Konoha shinobi. For sure the man probably didn't trust him but was going with the flow because the Sand siblings trusted him. Which forces wouldn't want the relationship to work? No, within Konoha, the dark forces only wish for Suna to surrender itself to Konoha. There were such forces. There was a saying, everyone has darkness. Konoha had its darkness and so did Sunagakur. The difference was how people dealt with their darkness. Temari pulled Naruto away before Gaara could say anything. Naruto had noticed that the Jinchuriki hadn't been particularly pleased with what Baki had said. If anything, it looked like he was contemplating on having someone else go with her as her guard. As they sped through the desert, Naruto glanced at the silent Temari. I never asked, how are you dealing with the change? Your brother usually threatened you but now is very protective. I'm just happy that I have my younger brother again. He was a very gentle child before our father sent people to kill him. Our father viewed things based on their value, even people. If he no longer saw value in something, he would get rid of it. He tried doing that to Gaara but my brother would kill all the people and so he stopped trying to do it. It was easy to understand why Gaara turned in the way he did. To have your own father try to kill you because he viewed you as a failure. But it wasn't Gaara's fault. It was their crappy Fuinjutsu users who couldn't devise a seal capable of allowing Gaara to use Shukaku's chakra without the Biju influencing him. The Uzumaki would never create something so pathetic. Fuinjutsu in some other villages was truly cheap imitations of the work of art that his clan was able to create. The seal that housed the Kyuubi was an example of this. It may have been used by his father but the basis of it came from work of the Uzumaki, something that his mother taught the Yondaime. You look displeased. Naruto smiled. Got lost in thought, he said. I don't know what I would if my own father was trying to kill me. Then again, had it not been for some of the Sandame's laws, I might have just hanged myself. Temari frowned. He could say something like that and yet sound so indifferent. Regardless of how you thought of it, that was just sad. Do you really have to say something like that in that tone? This is because it is the past, Tamari. That aside, I have come to understand that only hopeless people will think of ending their lives. My situation wasn't hopeless, I'd just yet to see the light. Naruto said a bit firmly. I'd like to camp somewhere closer to the border of the fire country, can we speed up a bit? You do know that I don't have as much stamina as you do, right? Well, if you get tired, I will carry you, Naruto said with a smile. I'd rather you not. Naruto just laughed and they ran through the desert, taking water breaks and there and then. By the time they reached the river country, the sun had already set and they stopped running. They walked slowly for a couple of hours before they finally reached a place where there was a stream of water and decided to rest close to it. Fire was set and tents were put up. Naruto collected the wood and did the fishing while Tamari watched. He seemed like he was used to this kind of thing. His tent though, it was big and she had peeked inside, it wasn't the kind of thing shinobi carried. It looked just way too comfortable for camping through the night. Then again, this wasn't to make you suffer. You couldn't mistake the symbols on the tent. It was the symbol she saw on every shirt he wore. Where had she seen it again? Tamari couldn't recall, but it was obviously something that had a meaning to Naruto. She was alone with Naruto, only separated by the burning fire that kept their bodies warm. Tamari hadn't really thought such a moment would come. She hadn't thought it would feel so weird. They were alone. No witnesses. He was the person who said things that provoked her to think thoughts she would never think. It worried her. It wasn't her physical safety that worried her, but her emotional state. Naruto's face was strange. Since he walked away down the water stream and disappeared, he was strange. She couldn't see it clearly, but she could feel that there was something different. I'd thought you'd be saying all kinds of things now that we are alone, Tamari said. It wasn't that she wanted him to tease her. She didn't want it. But she had nothing better to say to break the awkward silence. It was the first time she was experiencing this moment with him. Then again, she had never been so alone with him. Naruto's eyes moved towards Tamari. They could clearly see her. He could feel her breathing. She wasn't calm. She was having a difficult time. He could feel the slight tension in the air around them. Perhaps it was his silence. He'd never been so silent with her. You have your guard up. I'm waiting till you get sleepy before pouncing. Tamari smiled hearing those words. It didn't make her uncomfortable. It made her happy that he had responded positively. That reminds me, I'm sleeping with one eye open. Can't trust you not to peek while I sleep, can I? Naruto shook his head, wagging his index finger. You're thinking peeking. I'm thinking you waking up in the morning next to me. Tamari shivered at the thought. She fought hard to avoid picturing him. She was glad for the fire that he couldn't see the pink tint on her cheeks. Now that she thought of it, she hadn't even seen his chest. He really did like covering up his body. Forget his chest. She hadn't seen his arms up his to his elbow. He always wore long-sleeved clothing. I'd have to be dead for you to get that close. Even if you do get that close, when I arrive in Konoha, I will also be sending my condolences for their loss. Naruto laughed. You wouldn't want to kill your brother's friend, would you? Tamari shrugged. I'm sure he'd understand if I say his so-called friend was trying to violate me. Naruto looked thoughtful. Well, I can see him nodding, saying that you did the best thing, the blonde said. We will separate here, Tamari. I won't go anywhere further with you. I have to turn towards Takumi. I could escort you near Konoha and still be able to meet Jiraiya in time, but you'll be safe. He was serious. Tamari was a bit surprised for a moment. Not at those words but the seriousness of his tone. It sounded like she was talking to someone in power, someone who was dishing out instructions that were not to be questioned. Why? Naruto knew, she was asking why he didn't want to get close to Konoha. She was curious. My training trip wasn't supposed to take long, but it has been over 2 years and we are working towards a third. They probably want me to return, but Jiraiya and I still have many things to do. If I go near, I will be forced to get into Konoha. The moment I step through those gates, I won't be able to leave again. My training trip will be over. That was reasonable, Naruto thought. For some reason, Tamari thought he just didn't want to return to Konoha. She couldn't understand why. He didn't talk much about the leaf. He almost never said anything unless you asked. She didn't want to be nosy, but she was curious. She nevertheless didn't ask him. She didn't want to be a bother. I see, Tamari said. She paused, and stared. She wanted to ask, but she didn't know how to say it. When do you think we will meet again? At that moment, Naruto realized, he had grown a little too attached to this person than he would have liked. He had trained with her for many days. He had shared many laughs with her. He had seen her smile. He had seen her flustered. And honestly, he thought it was adorable. His smile would only make her angry. But that was fine. That was Subaku no Tamari. Naruto smiled. Tamari saw it. When Naruto realized he was smiling, and he had been caught, he didn't drop it. He was used to her presence, her curious glances. She was always trying to figure him out, trying to study him. Perhaps it was dangerous for him. But he was okay with it because she never asked. She never tried to sneak behind him to see what he was doing. She was curious, but she knew not to pry. Naruto didn't hate her. But, what? He shook his head. He was overthinking things once more. He did like people at a distance despite openly chatting to them, didn't he? Was it because he always wanted to be in charge? Once more, he shook his head. I don't really know, but if you miss a training partner, let me know. I don't even have a way of contacting you if you are not going to be in Konoha, Tamari said with a frown. Sometime in 5 or 6 months, we should be making way towards Konoha. Jiraiya said we'd have to discuss the conclusion of things, but we will surely see each other soon, Naruto said. That was the truth. He would see her again. But, Lord, he was walking into another dangerous situation. But this seemed fine. Her brother looked like a decent person. She was a pleasant person. He had his issues. He could work on them. And nobody needed to get caught up in it. Naruto smiled inwardly. Was it concern for other people? He has truly become soft in the inside. He could blame the Sandaime Hokage for this change. He had stopped caring. But Team 7 made him see things. It made him experience new things. Perhaps he enjoyed those fleeting moments a bit too much than he should have. Connections. Friendship. They were never meant to be lasting. He was never meant to be attached. Tamari smiled. I hope so, she said. A moment of peace settled in. She enjoyed it. How different her life has become over the past month. It was amazing how things could change. But then again, she never had a boy who wasn't her brother close to her. She had someone she could call a friend. Someone outside of her family. It was a good feeling. She glanced over at Naruto. His eyes were on the fire. She cast her eyes at the burning flames. She listened to the sound the wood made as they burnt. She laughed. She was amused at herself. When did she start doing this? She really needed to get a hold of herself. And you were saying people would think I was the crazy one, Naruto said after a moment. Tamari realized, she'd make a sound. She wasn't embarrassed. She just shrugged carelessly. Oh, brother, she was picking up his habits. I couldn't help myself. She was glad Naruto didn't ask. That happens, he simply said. Say, Naruto, Tamari started, staring deeply into his eyes. When he stared back, she shook her head. She could ask another day. Never mind, she said. I'll ask when I see you again. It was unlikely to be soon, but Naruto wasn't that curious to know what she wanted to ask. His mind was already filled with too many things. I'll remind you, I'm going to check the parameter. He stood up. Take my tent for the night, I will keep watch. Not for the whole night, wake up me so that you can also rest. Naruto nodded. I will do that. He would not. He did not. Tamari only woke up early in the morning, and when she woke up, he was gone. He wasn't taken. He had just left her. Yes, she thought it like that. He had left her. There was only a letter beside her. A couple of words that didn't give her comfort over the loss of her companion. Tamari took the letter and hugged it. For the first time since he came to Suna, Tamari felt lonely. She felt alone. A Megakure. The shinobi world was ruled by power, it was those with power that determined everything. Nagato had power, a Megakure had power. The great five nations were powerful. That was why their wars always affected even the smaller villages. They were always caught in the crossfire, they always get crushed under the weight. A Megakure had wounds from wars it did not start, wars it had no part of. He had pain, memories that he could not remove from his head. Because those with power used it recklessly and they suffered from it. But they would suffer no more. A Megakure would not suffer any more. This village, this home of his, it was firmly in his hands. The grip of the past dynasty, he had crushed it. There wasn't anything tangible that remained of it. Nothing. He eradicated it. It was nothing but just memories from the minds of people. But that would too disappear. His village had a massive population. But it didn't have many shinobi. That was why it was considered weak. That was why it was indeed weak in the past. But it was weak no longer. Over the past 5 years, he had been building its military strength. It had shinobi who could fight, shinobi who could stand behind to withstand the might of any hidden village. Jinchurikis were not a consequence. He could handle them, because he was strong. Konan, Nagato glanced over his shoulder as his partner walked towards him. Itachi just left the village, did he say anything to you? Konan nodded. Sometimes the Uchiha had a tendency to walk away from the village without saying anything. The journey always ended up in the Fire Nation. She had always assumed he was going to check on the hidden leaf, but he never said anything and they never asked him. He is going to offer his services to Uzu. Konan handled the Akatsuki while Nagato handled duties of the village. She handled all mission requests made to the Akatsuki and she assigned them to whoever she thought was suitable. But Uzu was always specific in their demands. It was always Itachi. Nagato went there occasionally. I hope he is careful this time around. Last time he returned before the mission was over because he had put some people under genjutsu. Nagato shook his head. The Uchiha was smart. But those people in Uzu were not to be underestimated. Even if Itachi was powerful, those people were not the ones to be fooled easily. The visual prowess was a thing to behold, but the eyes in that village saw everything. They said they made preparations this time around. He is going to stay in places he has to see, I doubt he has seen anything they don't want him to see. Nagato nodded to this. We are going to be doing more missions these days. But it will attract attention, he said. He was referring to AIM Shinobi. But it can't be avoided. We are ready for the world. The village will however remain closed. It isn't time yet. Iwa is trying to hire the Akatsuki to look into Uzu. Any other village trying? Konan shook her head. At least we know who the enemies are, but we can't afford to do anything at this time. The risk is too great for us. But if they try anything, they will be crushed. Nagato said. We are going to change this world, and there will be no one who will stand in the way. Those who try will be crushed. We have been wrong too often and because these people have power, they have always gotten away with it. We shall no longer allow them to make us experience pain. If they tried, it was them who would be made to experience the pain they have felt. Perhaps they would understand. Maybe they would not. But this world had to be changed. This order of things would be changed. And they would do it. They would not fail. Konan looked down at the streets. This was at least something they had managed to do, secure a Megakure. The village that once rained constantly now saw daylight. It was a beautiful sight. It was their home. The home they fought to protect when Yahiko was still alive and the home they now controlled. Uzushiogakure was a good friend of theirs. They could not accept any mission that required taking action against the land. It had already seen destruction, it would not see another one. What do you think will be Jiraiya Sensei's response when he hears that we are still alive? For some reason, Konan felt like asking the question. Their sensei. The man who taught them ninjutsu. The man who showed them love. He was a good sensei. A good person. When his teammate offered to end their lives, he offered to give them tools for survival. I wonder, Nagato said. But what he says is irrelevant. We have our dreams, Conan. No one will stand in the way. Not even Jiraiya. Later that day, Hidden Leaf. Tamari had indulged the thought that Naruto had been watching her all the way. She had felt like she was being watched along the way. But when she stepped into the leaf, she felt like she was really being watched. The eyes were not friendly. She could feel it and it made her uncomfortable. She really wanted to get to her business, then just get away from the village. Baki had been right. There were forces that were not pleased with how things were progressing. But at least no one in the village was glaring at her. They seemed to be over the invasion. Then again, Suna had really lost as well. Their leader. Her father had been murdered by Orochimaru. Tamari wasn't particularly sad by it. Even so, had he been alive, things would have been difficult. The leaf might have forced them to surrender. It was different because they knew and understood that they had been tricked. Tamari glanced at the person beside him. The Nara she fought in the Chunin exams. He was the one who welcomed her. He really looked happy with the silence. He was part of the team that entered the exams with Naruto. She wanted to ask, but she bit her lip. She didn't want to pry. Naruto never spoke. It was better to keep things as they were. You people are rather forgiving. If she was able to walk freely here, then her brother would be welcomed when he comes to this village. It wasn't a bad thing, it was good and she couldn't have it anyway. She wished Suna was like that. She wished people accepted her brother as she has, but she had to forget about it for now. It wasn't going to happen any time soon. She still held hope nonetheless. She did wonder though, did they treat Naruto in the same way? Tamari shook her head. She was thinking too much about that person who left her without a word. Now she was angry. She just wanted to hit him. Not everyone, Shikamaru thought for a moment. I think they just realize it would be too bothersome to hold grudges. Suna didn't cause the Sandame's death, it was Orochimaru. He paused. It is possible that they are blaming everything on Orochimaru. Well, you got to have someone to blame for everything, Tamari said. The most convenient choice was always the best, that was how people behaved. That was how people did things. In this case, it isn't exactly wrong, Shikamaru said. To this, Tamari nodded. Orochimaru had been the one fighting the Sandame Hokage and he was the one who murdered her father. If there was someone to hate for the invasion, it was him. Sunagaku still held some fault nevertheless. They still played their part. Her father had negotiated with Orochimaru. He wasn't killed before plans to invade Konoha were made, he was killed when going to Konoha for the finals of the Chunin exams. The rest of the walk towards the Hokage Tower was in comfortable silence. Tsunade stared at Tamari for a long minute before looking at Shikamaru. Thank you, Shikamaru. I will call you if there is something else. Hi, the Nara said lazily before walking away. Tamari was amused. To her, it seemed like he was saying, I really hope you don't call me. Please sit, Tamari. Tsunade said to the kunoichi. The Godime Hokage leaned back to her chair and stared at the young woman. She really had nothing bad to say to her or about Sunagaku. They had already discussed things with those in charge at the moment and she was pleased with how things have progressed. She didn't want any bloodshed. She didn't hold any grudges. But it was a fact that Suna had betrayed them even though they were allies. She almost snickered at the thought that after betraying them, Orochimaru had gone to betray them. It was like this in this world. You could never trust anyone with your back. You betray people and others will betray you. She still had to work around that issue. Suna had betrayed them. The village was struggling with resources and it did depend on the hidden leaf on many things. However, Konoha sold them cheap things of low quality because that was what they could afford. There was no charity. Even Konoha had to look after itself. But their situation didn't excuse their actions. Tsunade really didn't want to talk about Suna and Konoha. That was settled. But she knew Danzo wasn't happy. She knew he was probably plotting something. His suggestion had been to even take the Sand siblings and make them Konoha shinobi. Ridiculous. How long are going to stay here? I plan to return tomorrow morning. Temari responded calmly. She took out a scroll and handed it to the Godime Hokage. She didn't have to answer anything, she just had to give the woman the scroll. That was her mission. Tsunade nodded. Please see me before you leave, she said. I need to make preparations for your departure. I will have a team take you back to Suna. She said in a serious tone, but she would not explain anything or her reasons for doing what she was doing. Temari frowned, but she wasn't going to ask. She knew why. Someone had really been watching her since she stepped into this village. This was really a dangerous world, wasn't it? Konoha was big, it was to be expected to have so many forces. I was told that Naruto was in Suna. Temari nodded. He stayed with us for a month. He left after receiving a message from Jiraiya-sama. She was surprised with her response. She didn't say that she left Suna with him and wasn't planning on saying it unless the Hokage led her to it. I'm going to ask some questions, you don't have to feel pressured or forced to answer them, Tsunade started calmly. Who did he spend time with? Was he alone? What was he doing? She was worried, Temari realized. It was like a mother asking about her child. The look her mother had. This woman did care for Naruto. She really did. But Naruto never spoke about it. He never said anything. You wouldn't think there were people who cared for him in the leaf with how he avoided it and kept silence on the subject. Naruto had spoken to her freely and she had a choice here. Temari decided. She decided it was best to relieve the Godime Hokage of her worries. I spent time with him, I was the one who was actually training with him. I saw him every day. Tsunade's eyes lit a bit brightly. I only hear things from Jiraiya, but not from another set of eyes who have sat with him. When he left here, things weren't great. That is why I allowed him to go on the training trip. She paused. How close did you get to him? I don't know how, but we talked. Temari managed a small shrug. Just like how Naruto would respond to the question. God, she was copying his tendencies. Naruto didn't have a lot of people around him when growing up and trusting people was a little difficult. But when he got into a team, he trusted his teammates, they were friends, but the person who shared his loneliness betrayed that trust and nearly killed him. Temari now understood things. She understood why he looked so welcoming, yet not very close. She could only think that it was the Uchiha who did it. What a horrible thing to do. But Naruto still didn't look like someone who had trust issues. He talked to people, and he smiled. He hadn't pushed her away. Temari nodded. He is fine. After spending time with him, I can't really say there is something bothering him. She would not say though, that he didn't talk about many things personally. She would not say he never brought up Konoha or the Uchiha who nearly killed him. The Uchiha who betrayed his trust. I want some details, Tsunade said. It was more like an order than a request. For a moment, Temari thought of rejecting the request before nodding her head. She could indulge the Godime. Perhaps she would get to see how the experience affected her. Talking about it, sharing her experience with Naruto to someone who was listening so attentively, Temari felt like she was just breathing new air. It was a good experience. It made her free. She didn't say everything. She kept some details to herself. It seems that he is doing well, Tsunade said with a smile. I was really worried. The Godime looked at the scroll she had been given. She looked at it for a couple of moments. She'd already received a report that it might be so. It was perhaps good that this was happening now. A blessing that Naruto had befriended Temari. She was going to be the Kazuki's sister. They could use her. If things were not going smoothly, she could demand a political marriage. That would bind the hidden sand from doing anything. She could use this card to silence some critics over the way she has handled things. She wasn't going to do it, she was going to wait and see. Your brother is still young, I haven't met him, so I am going to be honest, what do you think? Tsunade asked the blonde wind user. He is capable and Baki has been preparing him over the past year. She would not say that he was simply being put in his position because the council was afraid of him. But that was Suna's internal problem. They would deal with it. If Konoha found out about it, they would work it out. But this didn't mean he didn't have the qualities. He had them and he would do a great job as Cage. That isn't very reassuring, but I have seen enough not to underestimate someone because they are young, Tsunade said. I will write to him. Konoha is still open to trading with Sunagaku, but we will have to revise things a bit. Tamari managed a smile. I will pass on the message, she said. A couple of days later, when Naruto walked into the room he had rented in this gambling town, he found himself standing face to face with blood-red eyes. Sharingan. Those eyes. Those damned eyes. Naruto really didn't like them. He wouldn't go as far as to say he felt nothing but contempt for them, it would be extreme. He knew this person. This was the elder brother of Sasuke. He should be afraid. He should be worried about the motives of this person. But Naruto was not. He was only curious, but he didn't show it on his face. His heart was beating a little fast, but he wasn't concerned. He needed to silence it. It was a dead giveaway. He walked past the man and settled by the window. Jiraiya was already in town. It was only a moment of time before the Sannin found him. Maybe he was already on his way. Itachi watched Naruto carefully. He should be surprised by the blonde's reaction to his presence, but he wasn't. He didn't even raise an eyebrow. He just watched the blonde walk past him. If Itachi wasn't seeing the blonde, he wouldn't say he was there. He had managed to completely erase his presence. It was remarkable. The tool's a trained silent killer. He didn't have much time with the blonde. Jiraiya was probably charging to this place he stood. I want to speak to you, Naruto-kun. Naruto didn't turn to the Uchiha, he merely responded in a cold tone. You have my ears. But not his eyes. Though, I find it interesting that a known S-rank criminal would be interested in just a mere genin. I think we both know you are more than that, Itachi responded calmly. I once served as an Anbu in Konoha and the Sandaime trusted me very much. Naruto glanced at the Uchiha through the corner of his eyes. I know, I did see you once or twice. He did speak very highly of you, even after the massacre. Then again, he was still fond of Orochimaru despite everything. The blonde paused. Like I said, you have my ears, but I may not respond. If I want to get answers from you, I'd be forceful, Itachi said calmly. It is about Sasuke-kun. Naruto said nothing. I know you were friends with him. I know things happened and he ended up joining the ranks of Orochimaru. He is training now, trying to gain power. You once tried to get him to return to Konoha, would you try again? Naruto faced the Uchiha with a look of indifference. Why? That baffled Itachi, but he didn't let it show. You no longer consider him a friend, it seems. There was still no emotion in Itachi's tone. Naruto looked away from Itachi without saying a word. After a couple of moments he responded. I can't really figure out why you are asking. I don't even know why you left him alive. I was thinking perhaps you just couldn't kill your younger brother. He shook his head. Sasuke decided that joining Orochimaru was the best possible cause for him. He wanted his revenge. Whether Orochimaru allows him to get it or not is his problem. I would be happy if he somehow kills Orochimaru, but I won't thank him. Orochimaru once tried to take my body. If he is going to use the same technique as he did with me, he will fail, Itachi said. I merely wanted to confirm if you were still willing to save my brother. At this point, even if he does get his revenge, he is likely to dive deep further into darkness. A man who massacred his entire clan shouldn't care, now should he? Naruto said. You shouldn't stay, of course, Itachi. It makes you look concerned, and that isn't the Itachi the world knows. Itachi narrowed his eyes. Those words were dangerous. Naruto has grown. He did observe the blonde a bit. He had been close to Sasuke, after all. The way they parted wasn't great, but still, he didn't expect the blonde to be so cold. What do you want from me, Itachi? I don't think you have come here for Sasuke. I have been around people, and when they want something, you sense it. This wasn't even the kind of crowd he hanged around with. Having such people with curious glances was even dangerous for him. Never did he even think that he would end up getting a visit from this infamous man. Konoha once worshipped him, but now he was just another Orochimaru. Pitiful. But Naruto didn't care much. He wasn't even fond of the Uchiha. For some reason, the Biju inside of him seemed to appreciate his dislike for those damned corrupted eyes that had the power to bend your will. I wanted to confirm something. Did you? If Naruto was curious, he didn't show it. There was still an air of indifference around him as he responded. Itachi did not respond to the question. He asked a question of his. As far as I am concerned, you are the only other Uzumaki who has no connections to the revived Uzu. Have they not approached you? I would find it curious if they have not. Naruto glanced at the Uchiha for a moment. This was an interrogation. A soft one. Those eyes were watching every inch of his body, waiting for any sign of deception. Have you been searching for the Uzumaki, Itachi? You're not answering my question. I'm not obligated to answer when you ignore mine, Naruto said with a shrug. I have been to Uzu, and I have traveled around a lot. I haven't come across any Uzumaki. The world is big, Itachi. The survivors of the Uzumaki clan scattered across the elemental nations after the destruction, Naruto said. It does make you wonder, doesn't it? What? In asking that, Itachi realized, Naruto hadn't answered his question and he was steering him away from it. His eyes narrowed dangerously. This was no normal teenager. He was at least able to confirm that. But Uzu would not show him anything. Maybe someone would slip in something to him, but it was unlikely. Uzu and Konoha were like brother and sister, and yet, none of the survivors ever took refuge in the hidden leaf. Naruto paused for effect. That is a puzzle, isn't it? It is, Itachi said. I will also reveal a little secret, since you don't want to cooperate with me. I am indeed a criminal and massacred my clan, but I still kept contact with the Sandaime Hokage. You see, when it came to you, he did not trust any of the Anbu. He contacted me. I was there when you two visited Uzu. Naruto turned to face the Uchiha. The mask on his face didn't slip, but he did have a raised eyebrow. Well, that is interesting. Well, at least no one in Konoha knows about it. He turned his eyes outside once more. What else do you know? Admittedly, nothing. This is why I came here. You were interested in Uzu back then, but now there is nothing. Why? Itachi asked. My time is up, but we shall talk again, hopefully. The Uchiha disappeared from the room after those words left his lips. A few moments later, Jiraiya burst into the room, looking worried. Naruto turned around to face the Sannin. I'm not paying for that damage, he said. Naruto was fine, but there was no sign of the Uchiha. Jiraiya frowned. He was late, but at least there was nothing wrong. Then again, he didn't exactly think that Naruto would have been harmed. What would Itachi have against his student? The Uchiha was a member of the mercenary group, Akatsuki, but they wouldn't be after Naruto, would they? Glancing at the door on the floor, Jiraiya sighed. I didn't book the room, I can't pay. I was never even here. Naruto sent the Sannin a look. You will regret many things, sensei. That said, he looked back at the window. What took you so long? I gotta held back someone, Jiraiya said with a grin. A young beautiful lady, and you just couldn't resist until you realized she was being manipulated, Naruto said with a shake of his head. You can be remarkable sometimes, sensei. You are only saying that because you didn't see her, Naruto, Jiraiya said. He was firm, anyone would have been distracted. But sometimes Naruto did act like he didn't recognize beauty when he saw it. Now that Jiraiya thought about, he never saw the blonde with a lady, even though he visited bars. He always came back alone. He was truly missing the joys of life, and this was his student. I'm sure I wouldn't have behaved in the same way as you, Naruto said with a shrug. When are you going to follow me? It would be nice to show you off. I did it once, never again, Naruto said with a slight shake of his head. How was your work? Jiraiya looked thoughtful for a moment. There was no harm done with Itachi, so they would discuss this issue some other time. He would not forget. For now, he was happy. He didn't want to ruin the moment even. Fruitful, the Sannin said calmly. I heard you got close to a certain blonde head. A grin plastered his face. Naruto faced Jiraiya for a moment. That look. The smile. It suggested something, but Naruto wasn't going to think too deeply about it. Tamari is a delightful woman. But that was that. Jiraiya shook his head. I don't have to teach you how to get close since you already know the trade, but if you keep watching the birds, they will fly off. You must make a move. He said seriously. You are still too young to talk about marriage, but you need to have fun, Naruto. You mean your kind of fun, Naruto said. I am not exactly a boring person in case you forgot. You know, I just am more controlled than you. Certainly, the blonde knew how to act. He could sit at a bar and laugh with a couple of ladies while drinking, but he would end it there. Jiraiya could confidently say the blonde knew the body of a woman, and yet, he never seemed eager. The toad sage sighed and settled on the bed. Tsunade was asking about you. I'm sure she was. As she does in her letters, you have a tendency to leave them open so that I can comment. And you don't. You pretend as if you didn't see anything. I don't pretend anything. I just keep my thoughts to myself. Besides, if you didn't ask for my opinion, I can't give it, Naruto said. How long do we have? She didn't stipulate, and I'm honestly fine with the way things are. I failed to do so many things in your younger days. I'm watching you grow, we are close, I am happy with that. But things had to come to an end. Nothing was forever in this world. He knew that. He had experienced it too many times. This end would be on his terms and he would be content with it. There was nothing that could take away the memories has shared with Naruto. There was nothing. The memories were his and he would make some more. But we are still wanted in Konoha, Naruto said. There was no emotion in his tone. And he wasn't looking at the Sannin. Jiraiya couldn't tell if the blonde was displeased. Yes, Jiraiya said with a small nod. We have to cover your Kaden training, and the Kyuubi's chakra. And we have to do missions for you to earn yourself more experience in battle. If the toads are willing, you will learn Senjutsu. Well, that is quite the schedule, Naruto said. We can do fire and Kyuubi's chakra simultaneously. It isn't my favorite meal to do 2 training exercises at once, but since we don't know when we will end our time together, we don't have a choice, Naruto said. Jiraiya could work with that. Are we going to talk about your skills in Fuinjutsu? His tone was serious. I don't usually push you for answers, but it is important if we are going to learn controlling the Kyuubi's power. Naruto glanced at Jiraiya at the corner of his eyes before looking at the streets. This town was lively. This wasn't his first time here. He'd come here looking for the old hag. What of my Fuinjutsu skills, sensei? I put it wrongly, Jiraiya then corrected himself. What is your knowledge regarding Fuinjutsu? You might not be able to apply the art in practical use, but sensei gave you many books about the art to read. He even had me hand over scrolls one have obtained from Minato. He would not tell me what it was for, but I suspected it was for you. He did give me things to read. Naruto said quietly. The third had me consume as much knowledge about Fuinjutsu as I could filter through my head. He said it was fine even if I didn't understand. I just had to consume the knowledge. He said it had to be on my head. When I was alone, sitting like this, I could search my memories and try studying the structures of seals. Since it was difficult, it would be enough to preoccupy my time. He had 2 reasons for this. He said it was my legacy. It was the legacy of the Uzumaki. The second was that he wanted me to think about something useful. He didn't want me filling my head with thoughts of my loneliness. Because I could concentrate, it was easy just thinking of diagrams I couldn't describe. At the same time, it was frustrating. But I also needed something to think about, so I filled my mind with those diagrams, arrays, drawings. Jiraiya was silent for a long minute as he absorbed those words. He knew of Naruto's habit. He knew the blonde could sit by the window for hours without moving. Why haven't you attempted learning it? Just because your mother was good at it doesn't mean you'll naturally be good at it, Naruto responded calmly. Those were the words the old man used to tell me. Jiraiya sighed. Do you know the secret of the necklace Tsunade gave you? It is a sealing technique, I know, but it can easily be crushed because it works best with Mokuden. It is the Shodai's jewel after all, Naruto said. What of it? Jiraiya shook his head. That is just another measure we have in case you lose control. But I don't know what it takes for it to activate. It didn't activate on 4 tails. There were still 5 my tails missing, Naruto said in a flat tone. We will work something out. Those tags you created are still useful. Yes, Jiraiya said with a nod. But he was looking for something a bit more permanent. Those seals required one to get close and Naruto couldn't apply them himself. There had to be something that could be activated automatically or through a hand sign. He would think of drawing up something. But at this stage, his mind could only think of a chakra suppression seal. How was the situation in Sunagakur? He did have a side mission. And now he had to give a briefing. Gaara is going to be made cage. I don't know when they will do the coronation. But you can rest assured, he is a good person who won't think of doing what his father did. I think by now they already know their village is weak. I didn't actually think that they would make him cage, Jiraiya said with a shake of his head. He is still just a brat. And Suna is a mess. Last time I checked, the Wind Daimyo was no longer even funding it. Their failed invasion hasn't even earned them new allies. That may be true, but Gaara is willing and has a lot to prove, Naruto said. You thought they'd put Baki? Jiraiya nodded. He was the Cage's right-hand man. Whatever he did, that man was in it too. The man explained. He then stood up. Let's go out. The day is still in its diapers, we need to let loose of some steam before going for our training. We can stay here for a couple of days before departing. Once we go to it, we'll spend at least 2 months away from people. Best we stock up for those days. Naruto shook his head. You didn't stock up on fun like it was a nutrient that could be stored in your body, but this was his sensei. His perverted sensei. Their time was running out. Perhaps he should indulge the man. He got out of the window and then stared at the Sannin. If you misbehave, I will walk away. Jiraiya grinned. I will be on my best behavior. He said. In your best behavior, you drool from your nose while peeking through a hole on some women, Naruto responded flatly. That's called research. Jiraiya said. You should try reading my books. You have all the copies, even ones I have yet to release. I have written one, I don't need to read them, Naruto said with a shrug. You do know Ika is for perverts, right? Jiraiya shrugged, and they then started to leave. He picked up the door he had broken and created a clone to take Naruto's things. They'd have to look for a new place to stay. How sad was the old hag? Very, Jiraiya said after shrugging off his surprise at the question. You do need to write to her. Why haven't you? Jiraiya, aren't I reactive to the matters of the heart? Naruto asked. That was a false impression, but who cared? She hasn't written to me either. Tell her to write something and I will respond. Isn't she the parent in this situation? You know, you can be frustratingly simple at times. Jiraiya said with a shake of his head. She'll probably hit you. Ooh, we can't have that, Naruto said with his eyes closed. Where are you taking me? We are just going to drink. I haven't seen you get drunk. I need to see who will first get drunk between me and you. That isn't a fair competition, sensei. You are a professional and I am just student, Naruto said with a shake of his head. And I only started drinking like last year. If you can't handle it, just say so, but I will consider it my win. Naruto eyed the Sannin for a long minute before speaking. Let us make a wager then. I'm not making a wager with you, Jiraiya said. Last time I ended up walking into a hot spring while, a women's bathing place. You were confident you could win. If I had lost, I would have been the one doing it. Jiraiya glared at Naruto. I doubt it, you have a smooth tongue when you want to use it. You could have ended up convincing them that you truly thought it was a men's place. You overstate my abilities, sensei, Naruto said with a shake of his head. Your student cannot talk a woman who has had 6 bottles to share a bed with him. Jiraiya thought about it before bursting with laughter. He walked closer to the blonde and put his right hand over the blonde's shoulder. Now that is an exaggeration, he said in a whisper. I know you can do better. Naruto glanced at the firm hand on his shoulder before looking at the road ahead. We shall see. Iwagakure. What took you so long? Onoki asked with annoyance as Kuretsuchi walked into his office. I called for you an hour ago. No, Kuretsuchi said with a shake of her head. It was 10 minutes ago. You are losing your sense of time, old man. Can't you even see? Should I get a bigger clock for you? Are you even hearing me? Onoki frowned. If you keep talking like that, I'm not going to retire. Kuretsuchi shrugged. It doesn't matter. You are going to kick the bucket very soon anyway. Onoki thought of sending the black-haired a glare, but he held himself. He tossed aside the mocking of his age and stared at the scroll before him. I have a mission for you. Kuretsuchi smiled at hearing this. She has been holed up in the village. It was nice to be able to go out and do a mission. There hasn't even been anything worthy of her skills. If her grandfather was sending her, then it must be something challenging. What do you want me to do? I want you to go to a town in the Fire Nation. Book a room and a certain man will approach and give you a scroll containing information. Don't lose it. Return immediately upon receiving it. Kuretsuchi frowned. There are messengers for that kind of mission. There is a danger that this person is being followed. If I send someone else, they might not return. Onoki said in a firm tone. The information is also very important. It affects our security. When you leave, please stop by Han and tell him I wish to see him. There is something going on, isn't it? Kuretsuchi asked in a stern tone. Ghosts of the past, Onoki said. I will explain it to you once you return. With the information you will receive, there should be something to talk about. Otogakure. As the days pile up, his master was getting worse. He was coughing blood and now they had bandaged most of his body. He kept in his room. It was almost pitiable. His once active and flexible master had been turned into something human. Something so fragile. Orochimaru was strong. He was powerful. Kabuto knew it better than anyone. He was the best of the Sanins, but now he had been reduced to a fit of coughs, a pained man who couldn't do things himself. It was a spectacular fall. But Kabuto knew. His master would rise up once more. Once he took Sasuke's body, he would be unstoppable. He would become the master that Kabuto had come to respect. For now, he could only watch the pain of his master. He couldn't do anything against it. He entered Orochimaru's room carrying the now customary tray. Orochimaru was sweating badly. A normal person couldn't tolerate the pain. But he was going through it. Your situation is getting worse, Orochimaru-sama, Kabuto said. The body had given away far quicker than both had anticipated. At this point, we will have to move things ahead. There is no need to hurry, Kabuto, Orochimaru said with a shake of his head. There is something that can cure this, but it is a temporary fix. You have to leave here to get it. Kabuto raised an eyebrow. Orochimaru trusted him with all his experiments and he did conduct some research for the man at times, but this was the first he was hearing about it. Should I leave everything you'll need? Yes, Orochimaru said. Behind my throne, there are 3 scrolls. Take the smaller one. It has everything you'll need. Hi, how is Naruto-kuna training progressing so far? Ah yes, the mysterious blonde who was being trained by his former teammate. Smoothly, but there is still a lot I don't know. He is still traveling with Jiraiya-sama, so their movements and activities are always covered, Kabuto said. I said we should keep his strength as a secret from Sasuke-kun, but when you come back, we shall go out on a hunt. You're thinking of using him to try to awaken Sasuke's Mangekyo? Orochimaru nodded. He didn't want to admit it, but it was unlikely for him to unlock it. He needed Sasuke to do it for him. Naruto-kun hates Sasuke now, but they were still friends. Sasuke might be able to awaken the Mangekyo after killing him. If it doesn't work out, it will be a good workout to test his strength. Will Jiraiya-sama allow them to fight? Orochimaru grinned. You should know they are not always together. We will wait for that moment. Tanzaku Gai. The conversation was going to come at any moment. Naruto had been counting the stars, waiting for Jiraiya to finally say the words he has been meaning to say. Itachi's appearance should have given him the energy. There were a lot of things that the Sannin has been refusing to say. Perhaps he was enjoying the moment and didn't want to ruin it by saying something that would displease him. For a man who thought himself as a failure, that was one reasonable thought Naruto came up with. Well, they have been on this journey for a while and he had known it would come up. He wasn't dreading the subject. He could take it on without flinching or being all dramatic. He was normal regardless of the subject being discussed. It was perhaps something he learned from that old man. Thinking of Hiruzen, Naruto couldn't help but play a couple of memories from the past. The good days. The whole of Konoha was against him. Academy teachers didn't want to teach him. They made sure to screw things up for him. It was a miserable existence, but Naruto had lived through it. He had endured because that old man was there for him, the Kyuubi's Jinchuriki. What did Itachi say to you, Naruto? Jiraiya finally asked. His eyes never left the blonde, they were stern. He wasn't going to back down if Naruto said he didn't want to talk about it. He was done being careful. Naruto glanced at Jiraiya from the window. The air was flowing nicely. He could use some warm-up once he is done with the perverted Sannin. He had questions. About Sasuke and Uzu. It was a curious encounter. Why would a criminal be curious about my thoughts if Uzu approached me? Jiraiya's eyes narrowed sharply. It was a curious thing. But then again, Itachi's actions have always been strange. Jiraiya couldn't understand what motivated the man. He couldn't figure him out. But then again, when he walked in a room, the Uchiha jumped out through the back window. They could never meet, but he was really looking forward to that meeting. That is indeed curious, Jiraiya said in thought. What did he say when you asked? Said his time was up, Naruto said with indifference. I was interested in his answer though. The way he asked didn't exactly sound like man corrupted by power. Then again, you can never be sure about appearances when it comes to the Uchiha, the blonde finished calmly. What if he is working with Uzu? Jiraiya said. Itachi has an affiliation with the Akatsuki, but I don't know anything about it. I'm merely speculating, but it could make sense if he was asking on their behalf. Jiraiya thought there was a chance that Uzu recruited rogue shinobi to protect itself. There couldn't be powerful shinobi in the village, so they had to be thinking about hiring shinobi who can protect them. He could be wrong. There wasn't that rumor out of things that reached the Wave Country. Well, he is a powerful shinobi, but again, you still question his motive, Naruto said. Jiraiya nodded. What did he say about Sasuke? Strange, Naruto said. He asked if I was still willing to fight for him, to try to bring him back to the good side. I was given the impression that maybe he doesn't actually hate his younger brother. From what I hear, Itachi loved his younger brother. It could be that he left him alive because he just could not kill him, Jiraiya offered. But that still does leave the door open to many questions. And zero answers, Naruto added. Jiraiya grunted in response. That is true, he paused before asking. What did you say about Sasuke? Are you still willing to try to get him back to the Hidden Leaf? Why? Naruto said. That is the response I gave Itachi and I am giving it to you, sensei. Naruto said. There was still no change in emotion. His voice never faltered. He was neither cold nor hot. This lack of emotion frustrated Jiraiya. Not because he expected the blonde to throw a fit. Naruto never did that. He was reserved and controlled. But this indifferent response meant he couldn't read him, and that is what frustrated him. He was your friend, Naruto. You cannot erase the past you shared with you. Regardless of what happens, the Sasuke you shared a past with will always be there. Jiraiya said in a stern tone. Regardless of what happens, Sasuke is a former Hidden Leaf shinobi and the people there still want him back. If you are ordered to bring him back, would you say why? When a shinobi is given a scroll and told to deliver it, does he ask why and what is in the scroll? Jiraiya frowned. Although Naruto wasn't looking at the Sannin, he could tell he was frowning. Exactly, Jiraiya. I would carry out my duty. Itachi was asking for my thoughts on the matter. If it was my choice, what would I do? You didn't answer his question and you didn't answer mine. Your responses have been with questions. Jiraiya said. I gave you a reason, he was your colleague, now, you can either choose to ignore it or accept it. I have no attachment to the Uchiha, Naruto responded. Honestly, his attachments to the people in Konoha were fragile. He never got too close because he knew it was a fleeting moment. I have not really thought of him since he departed Sensei. At this point, Sasuke is irrelevant to my training and my future. Regardless of how you look at it, those words were just cold. Then again, how many years did he spend chasing after Orochimaru? Did he succeed? Of course not. I really hope I don't become irrelevant. Naruto glanced at the Sannin for a moment before shaking his head. You can be miserable at times, he said. But it is a fact, Sasuke and I were friends. It wasn't what he wanted. He played the role of a mere genin all too well. He ended up getting attached. It wasn't supposed to happen. But he got closer. It was his mistake. You really couldn't fully predict the human emotion. He wasn't sad things ended up in the way did. That was why he wasn't moping. Perhaps people thought he had been miserable after Sasuke left. Yes, he was, but not for the reasons they had in mind. What of Konoha? You've never talked about it. There isn't really nothing much to tell, or talk about. That aside, I really didn't want to focus on the leaf. I just wanted to get my head straight into training and forget about Konoha. It doesn't work like that, Naruto. Konoha is home, you have to think about it. Perhaps, but we are still going back. The village isn't under attack, I never felt like talking about it, Naruto said carelessly. What are you worried about, sensei? Are you thinking that if the Uzumaki come knocking I will drop Konoha off the bat without blinking? Jiraiya wasn't that concerned about it, but to say he didn't think about it would be an outright lie. Naruto would have every reason to depart the leaf and honestly, Jiraiya would not blame him if he decided to leave. Konoha hadn't done him any favors. Minato would be disappointed. The leaf was supposed to be home, but it certainly hadn't treated him like it had been his home, and that was because he was the host of the Kyuubi. Uzu was still Naruto's home. His mother came from the land. If he wanted to go back, there shouldn't be complaints. But Konoha would not let him leave. They would allow it. There was a sense that the blonde belonged to them. The Kyuubi was their property. Jiraiya sighed. Don't say it like that, Naruto, he said calmly. I understand, but there are people in the Hidden Leaf who are asking questions. I'm a shinobi of Konoha, it is only natural that I be concerned. Naruto didn't offer an immediate response. A couple of moments passed before he spoke. Well, you still don't know if Uzu is an ally or an enemy. There should be concern there, he said. Everyone is worried about that, Jiraiya said with a nod. Tsunade wants us to be on the lookout for Sasuke. If I get information about his whereabouts, we will move. Any time now, Orochimaru might take over his body. Well, that is what he wants. He is willing to sell his soul to the devil, Naruto said without emotion. But Sasuke is an emotionally unstable spoiled child. I guess it can't be helped. So you won't have a problem. Naruto shook his head. Not at all. A mission is a mission and we can't have Orochimaru becoming powerful. It would become a problem, he said. When do we move? I'm still waiting for some information, Jiraiya said. He was silent for a couple of moments before speaking. I feel that there is a storm that is coming. It is making me nervous. This world might become unstable and the peace might be threatened. Naruto wasn't all that deep into the talk of peace. Jiraiya surely loved the subject and Naruto had indulged the Sannin on a couple of times. Well, we must be prepared for everything. In this world, you never know what is going to happen tomorrow. This is why we must always be prepared for anything. To this, Jiraiya nodded. I'm going to see one of my contacts, the Sannin said standing up. You want to come? Naruto shook his head. I have had enough activities for the day. I wish to stay in. I will go out tomorrow to stretch some muscles. Jiraiya nodded and walked away from the room. 3. With the Sannin gone, Naruto released a long breath he'd been holding. Silence. Peace. The solitude. Finally, Naruto was sitting on a clear field, just away from Tanzaku. He had an expressionless mask on his face, staring down at a couple of lines he'd drawn on the ground. Sometimes he liked to keep up with sealing. He didn't need any more training. Manuals. Many seal structures and what they did, they were memorized inside his head. The Sandaime Hokage had made sure his mind was a field of seals. Sometimes it made him crazy. Sometimes whenever he closed his eyes, he could only see the marks, the tattoos. They were complex and he'd obsessed trying to untangle them. At least spending hours each day just thinking about seals had driven away the demons, the laughter inside his head, the whispers from the villagers, those eyes that glared at him with nothing more than contempt. He'd forgotten about them. Even when teachers at the academy refused to give him anything good and actively tried to sabotage his grades, Naruto had found comfort in Fuinjutsu. His legacy. His savior. Because of the role he has had to play as a shinobi of the Hidden Leaf, Naruto had been forced to forget about Fuinjutsu, practicing it and using it. But he didn't want to lose his touch. Yet, having a paper and a brush would earn him questions from Jiraiya. It was a dangerous situation. He avoided dangerous by abstaining from things whenever possible. But since the man had brought up the subject, it was safe to study. Space-time ninjutsu. A rather delicate art. It was complex, yet very useful. Perhaps he would have never gotten this far without it, to be able to move from one place to another in the blink of an eye. It was a tremendous ability. His father had truly made himself famous by taking the Nadaime Hokage's jutsu into another level. People praised Minato for his genius, but Tobirama was the true genius. He created so many jutsus, some now forbidden in the Hidden Leaf. A kunai flew towards him from behind. Naruto tilted his head to the left while raising his hand. He caught the kunai through his fingers and looked at it for a moment. Without even looking, he flung it backwards before stood up. It almost never happened that he found himself a target of an attack by someone. Naruto hasn't gone around pissing off people within the elemental nations, and his actions since he saw the result of Uzu's destruction have always been subtle. He never got too involved. His hands were free. It wasn't to say they had no blood in them. He was a shinobi. That was bound to happen. Because there were few people who'd have something against him, Naruto concluded that this was Konoha's mischievous people. He wasn't too sure, so he would have to ask. He doubted they would talk, but he would still ask. There was no harm in asking, was there? Naruto looked at the four masked men with an expressionless mask. He was being disturbed from his training. He generally didn't like it because now he would have to go again in reorganizing his thoughts. One of them lunged towards him. Having spared with Jiraiya for countless times, Naruto could see the masked shinobi coming all the way. He felt bored. But he could still use this as a training session. He hasn't had one where bones could be broken. He could do this. But they would still have to pay disturbing his time. The masked man stabbed a kunai towards his face. Naruto sidestepped the strike and twisted around swiftly. He lifted his right hand and slapped the man on his shoulder, sending him off balance. You're slow, you need to increase your speed. He stated calmly. The man responded by twisted clockwise, while lifting his right foot. Naruto watched the incoming attack. If he stood still, he would be hit on his shoulder. He jumped back, slightly, avoiding the kick. Only his left foot touched down the ground. He'd sensed more movements. A second after touching the ground, another masked man flashed just above him. He swung his sword in a downward slash that was aimed at his right shoulder. Naruto leapt into the air, and twisted around. He slammed his foot on the man's shoulder, sending him flying away. He then landed gracefully. Kaden. Great fireball. The fireball was coming in from behind. It was a pathetic excuse for a fireball. Naruto had seen something bigger from Jiraiya. Hell, even Sasuke did better than this. Almost lazily, swiped his right hand and then snapped his fingers. The flames just died down in the blink of an eye. You're all not very strong. It is quite pathetic really for shinobi who wear masks, Naruto said with a shake of his head. Come on, let me end this, he said motioning for them to come. Perhaps he was being too rough of them. He has been training with Jiraiya and he wasn't exactly weak. He was strong. Even so, it was quite disturbing to learn that they could not even touch him. He should have just broken them at first glance. When they didn't attack him, Naruto took out kunais from his pouch. He held them all with just his left hand and then flung them towards the masked men while charging forward. The man he was facing dodged the kunai by tilting his head to the side. When he saw Naruto coming, he threw a right hook, but slowed down, falling backwards slowly and watched the punch with both his eyes. He held out his right hand and channeled wind chakra, forming an invisible blade. He swung it and cut through the man's elbow, separating his arm from his shoulder. There wasn't even a sound from the man when the sword struck. When the man attempted to run away, Naruto took out a kunai, channeled wind chakra through it and flung it. The kunai pierced through the man from the back of his neck and went through his throat before dropping dead. Naruto fell on his back when he saw another masked man stomping downwards. He rolled to the side just once to avoid the blow. When the man's foot crashed into the ground, Naruto's right hand moved swiftly with his wind blade still activated. The blade cut through the man's left leg, just above his knee. He stood up and another swing cut through the right shoulder and blood gushed out as the man fell down. 2 more to go. They both charged towards him. Naruto stood still and waited for what felt like eternity. They flanked both his sides, swinging their blades in horizontal slashes. The swings cut Naruto but he turned into a cloud of smoke. Naruto flashed behind the man who'd attacked him from the left. He grabbed him by the back of his neck and pushed him towards his colleague. He shifted to the right when the other man pierced through his comrade's gut in order to get him. Naruto did the same, but his strike was marked towards the man's heart. It just pierced through and he dropped dead. Naruto twisted the man he held and lifted him up into the air. Foundation, he uttered. I find it convenient that after Itachi leaves, you guys appear. Is Itachi in contact with Danzo? Did he threaten your master with intel? Are they working together? He shook his head. The man said nothing. Can't talk, Naruto said. I really don't have the time to torture you. Take the pieces of your colleagues and go away. Do tell Danzo that I wish he not do this again. Naruto dropped the man to the ground and walked towards where he had been sitting. He stood there for a moment before shaking his head and then settled down. What was he busy with, again? Ah, yes, space-time ninjutsu. The jutsu he had in his position wasn't anything like what the Nadaime created. His jutsu wasn't for battle. It was purely made for traveling long distances. He still burned a lot of chakra using it, and he needed to find a way to do it without burning as much chakra as he does when he uses it. He couldn't test anything now because ever since he became a genin of the Hidden Leaf, he deactivated all seals he was attached to. He was playing a role. To be able to work on it, he would need to activate the seals. He couldn't do that now. It was dangerous and would attract too many questions. Naruto shook his head and rubbed away all the drawings on the ground. He closed his eyes and decided to meditate. After an hour or so, his eyes snapped open as Jiraiya walked into the field in a leisurely pace. Something happened here, the Toad Sage said calmly. His eyes glanced around before looking back at Naruto. Your timing sucks, sensei, Naruto said. I was still busy, do you also come early? It took a moment for Jiraiya to understand the meaning of Naruto's words. When he did, he grinned. I knew you were no innocent. You act like you have no interest in women, but you are not so innocent. I never claimed I was innocent, pervert-san, I just have my days. I don't know what is with you. Maybe you are trying too hard to be loved because someone refused to love you or because you really are just a pervert. Naruto shook his head. Either way, you shouldn't read too much into my actions. For me, it really has to do with convenience most of the time than desire. I'm surprised you even have desires, Jiraiya said. You generally don't show any desire in anything aside from training. Even so, you are never too excited. Naruto shrugged. Everyone has a desire, sensei. Everyone dreams of something. I have dreams, I just choose not to make them public. What are those dreams? Naruto appeared to be thinking about a response for a couple of moments, but he didn't respond to the Sanin's question. Something did happen. Masked men attacked. I think they might be from Konoha. Jiraiya's eyes narrowed sharply. Can you describe the masks? And Naruto did so. The Toad Sage frowned. They are indeed from Konoha. What do you know about the Danzo? The Sandame's former teammate and someone who considered himself to be his rival but still could never hold a candle to the Sandame. He warned me. If someone called Danzo approaches you, come to me immediately and don't talk to him, Naruto said. I trusted the old man, so I never asked too many questions. Danzo leads an organization called the Foundation. He has done many experiments with it and they are basically the dark horses of Konoha. Danzo says they live to protect Konoha and will do the dirty work that the Hokage cannot do. He has his own agenda, of course. But Sensei always thought he was useful and never got rid of him. When you were younger, he fought. He pushed and pushed for you to be given to him so that you could be trained as a weapon that would only live to serve Konoha. You see, Danzo teaches his forces to abandon all emotions. They are nothing but tools. The mission is important than their lives. Naruto looked into the sky for a moment before responding. This power within me does attract all kinds of vultures, doesn't it? Well, the Kyuubi is still the strongest Biju and control over its power means you have a powerful weapon, Jiraiya said. It has an unlimited supply of chakra. That was an overstatement. As long as the Kyuubi was a living thing, it could not have an unlimited supply of chakra. If it was a force of nature, then he could understand. The fact was that by human standards, a Biju's chakra supply was enormous. You didn't have any human who could rival it in terms of pure chakra. This is the reason people even hunted them in the first place, for their chakra. If it was like that in this world, if you had too much power, you either joined them or you faced destruction, a corrupted world. But those with power controlled it and the weak could only complain about in their dark little corner of misery. Power, that is something people desire. Some will do everything for it, kill, betray, sell their souls. Power is everything, or at least fools think, Naruto said with a shake of his head. I was being tested. Probably, Jiraiya said. Did you give them a good spanking? Naruto shook his head. No, he said. Are you going to warn the old hag? Can you stop calling her that? Naruto stared for a moment before shaking his head. When we arrive in Konoha, I will sweep her off her feet and call her princess. Will that make you happy? Jiraiya painted the thought on his head, and tried to imagine just how Tsunade would react to it. Try it, he said with a grin. You're being mischievous, Naruto said. Then, of course I have to warn her, the Sannin said. Danzo is dangerous and bad news. I will step on his neck if he is trying something. There had to be a reason the man was making a move now. It could not be that he was simply trying to examine if Naruto was learning something new or not. There was always something with the War Hawk. Jiraiya really didn't like dealing with that extremist. It was never good for anyone. I guess he is also the dark force Suna was concerned about, Naruto said in thought. You didn't say anything about that, Jiraiya said to Naruto. You never said Suna was worried about something happening in Konoha. I didn't, Naruto asked with a raised eyebrow. It must have slipped my mind because it was something that occurred when I was coming back. But if Princess Tsunade is doing things, there shouldn't be anything to worry about, unless Danzo taps into the village's council, Suna's council I mean. I don't think he'd go that far, Jiraiya said. He could just plan for something to happen to Temari and then blame it or any other village. That sounds like work. Danzo is work, Jiraiya said in a firm tone. In the Third Shinobi World War, he was pushing for Konoha to pin Iwa down and maybe take over. The village was willing to talk at that point, but he didn't want it. He wanted Iwa destroyed. I wouldn't be surprised if he even tried to sabotage them. The Sannin paused. I thought you'd show some concern for Temari. Naruto eyed the Sannin very carefully for a moment before shrugging. Temari, the blonde sister of the Kazekage he'd come to know. She was truly a delightful person, and to say he got along with her wouldn't be a lie. Still, Naruto wasn't going to stress over it. Perhaps, I have to believe that the people in Konoha are not ignorant of this, and Suna seems to be aware, so it should be fine, Naruto said. Jiraiya shook his head. What did he expect? Did he expect Naruto to cry over it and think of rushing over to the blonde's side? At this time, Jiraiya even considered if Naruto was even really mad that Sasuke tried to kill him. He wondered if the blonde was just perhaps mad that he allowed himself to get close when he had grown up distrusting people. Guess what? Jiraiya said, trying to change the subject. Guess what? Naruto responded. Jiraiya frowned, positive he wasn't going to like Naruto's game. What? He forced himself to say. I don't want to play. The Tsuchikage's granddaughter is within the town, you have to go to her and speak with her. The Toad Sage in a serious tone, ignoring Naruto. More schemes by Jiraiya. When it came to collecting information and data, the Sannin really went all out. But Naruto was certain that Jiraiya wouldn't have come to him if he could do it himself. Naruto really never bothered himself with Jiraiya's services of gathering intel. He always made sure to keep a safe distance. Why can't you speak to her? Obviously you want to find something about her and Iwagakure, Naruto said. Jiraiya nodded his head before smiling. Well, I don't want to go anywhere close to her. You know young girls sometimes don't like older and experienced men crawling up close to them, he said. Besides, it will be more interesting with you speaking to her. Ah, Minato wasn't a famous person in Iwagakure. They held a grudge for his actions in war, but that should be over now, don't you think? Jiraiya nodded. They won't have anything against you, but when you keep your hair long like that, you turning into him, the Sannin said with a slight shake of his head. The outside world never knew of Konoha's Jinchuriki, and I don't think even now they know. But there were things happening and we need to know what is happening. I doubt I will get much from just speaking to her, and you are obviously aware of this, Naruto said with a stare. Are you trying to fix me up with her? Jiraiya merely grinned. What would be the problem if I was? I don't find it amusing. Naruto said. What is she doing here? Well, you see, one of my contacts is an Iwa spy. She is here to meet him, Jiraiya said. He seemed really pleased with himself. After meeting him, she will leave the town, so you have to speak to her today. I don't want to miss an opportunity. More like you don't want me to miss an opportunity, Naruto said. Are you sure my performance is that interesting? Jiraiya nodded. I'll be watching. Don't, Naruto said. I will be uncomfortable knowing that a perverted hermit is busy giggling with his notebook while dreaming about a potential pairing and harems you'll create for me. That wouldn't be a bad idea, you know, Jiraiya said in thought. I won't watch, but I still want a detailed report. Since when have I given you a detailed report? Jiraiya frowned. You will have to stop doing that, the Sannin said sternly. We shall see, Naruto said as he stood up. When are we leaving? We have to wait for Kakashi, he is coming here with something from Tsunade. After that, we'll disappear. Jiraiya explained lightly. What were you working on? Before I came here, I first stopped by somewhere to fetch my armor. I was preparing things and I want to formalize myself with it. In our next sparring session, I will be wearing it. About 2 hours later, Kuretsuchi, the granddaughter to the Tsuchikage, a young black-haired woman who was obviously very attractive. She was obviously a very capable kunoichi, if given the way she carried herself meant anything. Then again, she was related to the current leader and was thought to be on the front seat to replace Onoki once he does retire from his position. The old man was currently the oldest Kage alive and active. The Sandaime had made him learn everything about the cages and their power, a bit of history about them. Information was always essential before you made a move. Naruto was certain though, none of the current cages could be compared to Hiruzen in terms of strength. In his prime, the Sandaime had no one to rival him. It did make Naruto wonder just how the old man who stack up if he was pitted against the first Hokage or the second. Shaking his head, Naruto reminded himself of where he was, in a bar. Shinobi liked this place. Not for the drinks or the pleasures, but exchange for information. It was a good place to overhear conversations, to accidentally bump into certain people. Or maybe to poison someone. Such places existed in another world, far away from the normal things that occurred in the streets. Naruto picked up his bottles and walked over to the Kuretsuchi. She was sitting alone by a corner. She was obviously looking for someone. She didn't show it, but Naruto had observed people around this place that he could tell what they wanted judging by their body language. Kuretsuchi looked up when the blonde walked up to her. She stared at him, seeing the headband on his forehead. It was bit hidden by the wild blonde hair, but it was Konoha. She frowned. She wasn't looking forward to dealing with Leaf Shinobi. Not now, not at a place like this. But this was the Fire Nation. Leaf Shinobi were everywhere, so it could not be avoided. When did she last someone a picture of such blonde hair and blue eyes? Oh yes, the Yondaime Hokage, a very famous man. Konoha worshipped the man while Iwa was a little bitter that one man had forced them into the negotiating table during the last war. She was well aware that if not for the Sandaime Hokage, the man would have done more damage than he did. At least that was what her grandfather told her. She didn't see it. She hadn't been born into the world, so the fame of the Yondaime was nothing but a story to her. You just didn't think of Konoha's yellow flash, did you? Naruto asked in a light tone, a small smile on his lips. He was still standing. Kuretsuchi blinked. I just did, she said with narrowed eyes. I bet people who have seen him will be thinking the same, Naruto said with his smile. Can I join you? No, Kuretsuchi quickly said. I won't take much of your time, Kuretsuchi. Naruto said, looking straight into her eyes. Oh, and I will tell you a little secret that not even Konoha knows if you let me sit, he said in a whisper, a sly smile in his lips. Kuretsuchi frowned. He knew her name. He came here because he knew her. Well, there was no harm in letting him sit with her. She was getting bored alone and was even thinking of leaving anyway. She still had the rest of the day and tomorrow. You can join me, she said. What is the secret? Naruto settled gracefully. He noticed, although she had a bottle before her, she wasn't drinking it. Naruto Uzumaki, a shinobi from the Hidden Leaf, he pointed at his forehead. Uzumaki? Kuretsuchi asked. She was immediately interested in listening to that person. She was surprised to see someone from that clan here. Not to mention, as a shinobi of the Hidden Leaf. There were issues with the land of Uzumaki, so seeing another one of them here was a good thing for her. Ah yes, Uzumaki, Naruto said with a smile. My mother was Uzumaki, born in Uzu, but because of the friendship with the Hidden Leaf, she moved there at a young age. Kuretsuchi nodded. Why did you decide to join me? You are a kunoichi of Iwa, and you are sitting here alone, it gives you away, Naruto said with indifference. Besides, you are a rather attractive woman. As a man, I can't ignore you. Kuretsuchi snorted. Easy pickings. Naruto laughed. Not at all, he said. Do you think I came for that? If you want easy pickings, he said, turning around and pointed at a woman was drinking heavily, you go for that. You don't approach a woman who isn't even drinking her alcohol and her defenses are as tight as a seal holding back a jinchuriki. Kuretsuchi stared for a moment. That is a funny way of describing someone's defenses, she said. But if defenses are not up, scums walk all over you, I don't have time for that. I would think so, Naruto said. Do you just perhaps enjoy the challenge? Kuretsuchi asked. You could never be too sure when it came to shinobi. Some people were just for punishment. She could never understand masochist. Naruto smiled mysteriously. Who knows? That smile. Kuretsuchi couldn't read it. She couldn't read a damn thing. She couldn't even read the blonde. It made her uncomfortable. What is the secret you wanted to tell me? Naruto smiled a bit sheepishly. Well, the truth is, I really didn't have any secret. I just wanted you to let me sit with you. He said. He would admit he lied with such a smile on his lips. She shook her head. So you are Uzumaki, any connections with Uzushiogakure? Naruto took one bottle and put it on his mouth. He took a couple of gulps before putting it the table. That hit the sweet spot, he said smiling. What were you doing alone? People come here with boyfriends, friend, to have fun. I came to drink, you are not drinking, and since this is far from home, we can rule out friends, found love with a man far away from home. Naruto glanced around the place. Now which one could be your type? I figure he has to be strong, good looking, or do you perhaps like women? What? Kuretsuchi looked baffled. Naruto laughed. I'm just messing with you, he said. I wanted to see your reaction, but I am curious, do you have someone you love? What does that have to do with anything? I said you were an attractive woman. No. Naruto grinned. Would you like to be friends with me or maybe more than that? Even a friend is better. I don't know you, but I want to know you. Isn't that wonderful? I'm sure as the Tsuchikage's granddaughter, you probably don't get a lot of friends and I'm sure, boys, are intimidated by you to even come close. The last one hit the spot but Kuretsuchi wasn't all that concerned with it. She didn't even spend her time thinking about such issues. There were more important issues in life. You must be thinking you don't have time for it because you have to think about your career, but I must ask, wasn't it the same for your grandfather? It is especially worse with him since he lived in the times of war. He still made time for family. He had one of your parents and your parents had you. It is only natural for you to continue with the cycle. But that alone isn't enough, it is happiness that matters the most. You should ask your grandfather why he had a family in a time of war. Kuretsuchi was silent for a couple of moments. What do you know about happiness? You seem rather happy gulping down the alcohol. Naruto smiled a small sad smile. I'm a miserable person who wants to bring happiness in his life, he said. What do you say to my offer for friendship? Shinobi want to benefit in everything. I will tell you this, I actually look a bit like Konoha's yellow flash because I'm his son. Don't tell anyone about it, it's a secret, he said in a whisper. So, what do you say? Don't you want to befriend someone like me? Given the history with Iwa and the fact that you are Uzumaki, I'd rather kill you than befriend you. All the better, become close to me and you decide whether I should be killed or befriended. You can do that easily while close to me. Kuretsuchi thought about it before smiling. That makes sense, she said. You have deal. Naruto tilted his head aside. His stare made Kuretsuchi uncomfortable. Before she could ask, he spoke. You have a beautiful smile, he said. You asked if I have any connection with Uzu. I can't answer that, nor can I tell you if I can use my father's jutsu. We will talk when we meet again. We are going to be friends, right? Kuretsuchi frowned. That was disappointing. She had been hoping that he would start singing like a bird because he was drinking. Wait, if she let him continue drinking, wouldn't he end up getting drunk? He didn't seem like someone who was fearsome. But you could never know with Shinobi, right? There was no harm in entertaining him for a bit longer to see if he would sing. So, Kuretsuchi paused, trying to figure out what to say. I have said a couple of things about myself, you haven't, why don't you start? Or we can hit a battlefield if you think that is dull, a sparring session could be good. I hear some people understand each other better when they cross blades, Naruto said with a shrug. You don't really believe that, do you? If you close your heart, no one will get to it by fighting you unless you really want them to do so. If you, Kuretsuchi, don't want to be a friend of mine, sparring with me will only change if you find my skills acceptable, Naruto said. But I do believe a man and a woman can understand each other better when they do foreplay. You get to know your sensitive areas, and maybe when you hit the good spot, some secrets slip out. You're pervert, aren't you? Naruto shook his head. I'm merely stating what I believe, he said. What is it going to be? Kuretsuchi would rather have him continue drinking so he gets drunk and start talking. I'll talk. Naruto nodded. But I have a rule, he said. If you lie and I spot it, you take a drink. He pushed a saucer towards her. It wouldn't be fun if I got drunk alone, now would it? Kuretsuchi frowned. She was going to get drunk. There was a reason she wasn't even drinking in the first place. But Naruto was already way ahead of her, and if she doesn't admit that she is lying, how would he tell? Of course, she had no intentions of telling the whole truth. Fine. Oh, she regretted that choice. Later, Naruto was sitting by the window, looking over at the streets of the town. Nothing was ever like Konoha. There was peace. There was freedom. Konoha had restricted his movements with its contempt for him and really made things difficult. He could have left any time he wanted. Uzu was his home, it was the home of his mother. But it was dangerous. The people in Konoha would have turned the world upside down looking for him. If they found out he was in Uzu, they'd raise hell. People like Danzo would be at the forefront of the attacks. The man would be looking for his biju, the kyubi. When it came to him, the only thing the man was interested in was the biju. It didn't matter if Uzu and Konoha were technically still allies, Danzo would try to invade Uzu. If he could not, he would entice the enemies of the whirlpools to do it for him. The War Hawk was capable of doing something like that. Being here was safer. And as long as he gained strength, it was more than enough. There was not even a need to rush things. He was growing. He needed to grow. They needed to be careful, lest they suffer another tragedy. Your ability to remain still for hours still amazes me, Jiraiya said. He was standing next to Naruto, eyes glancing between the blonde and the streets. I have been doing this since I was 5, Naruto said. When you do something repeatedly, it becomes natural for you to do it. Well, not all things, Jiraiya said with a sly smile. What did you to the Tsuchikage's granddaughter? Nothing. Were you threatened by someone? Jiraiya shook his head. No, but she was drunk. Oh yes, we were playing a little game and she was a bit too confident in her ability to lie. Then again, I'd made her a little curious by telling her some things, Naruto said with indifference. She is an excellent kunoichi. Even though intoxicated, she didn't say anything. I just helped her to her hotel. You don't sound like you got anything out of her. It wasn't my intention to get something out of her, Naruto said. I just wanted to lay the foundation for future relations. I'm sure tomorrow or when she wakes up, she will be very pleased that I was a gentleman despite there being occasions she felt compelled to ask if I was a pervert. Jiraiya narrowed his eyes. Are you saying that you will see her again? Naturally, Naruto said with a nod. Who knows, we might be friends. Can you try to be a little enthusiastic about that? Jiraiya said, seeing the indifference in Naruto's body language. Kakashi will arrive tomorrow. After he leaves, we will depart. Do everything you need to do by the end of the day because we leave tomorrow. There isn't much for me to do, Naruto said. Some rest will do, he said with a yawn. I think I will sleep for the rest of the day. My mind is a little tired and I don't want to be seen by Kuretsuchi. A year later, she'll look at me and think, oh, this is the guy who I got drunk with and then walked me to my place, and laid me on my bed. A bit of an embarrassing moment, if she tries to think of what if. You're cruel, Jiraiya said. She is going to be thinking about that the moment she wakes up. You didn't leave any letter, nothing, you just left. That brings curiosity and the desire, sensei. Naruto said in a simple tone. When you passionately kiss a woman, and then leave her with a hand on her lips, thinking, wow. She will think about that kiss when she wakes up, when she kisses another man. Speaking like a corn artist, you do that often. Naruto shrugged. You jealous that I can do that? Well, I could understand, I don't see any woman chasing after you, saying they want more. I haven't seen any woman chasing after you either. Nice touch, Naruto grunted. But you should be satisfied that we shall speak again, no? For better relations with Konoha and Iowa, that is suitable, I bet the creepy geezers in dark corners would be thinking about a political marriage. 3 months later. Jiraiya damn sensei. Naruto couldn't understand the Sannin at times. He really did like doing things at his own time and wouldn't allow anyone to interfere. He never really did like spending too much time at one place. They'd spent 2 months training together and the Sannin then suddenly said he was going and would return soon. He never returned. He left him and never returned for a whole month, and now a letter came, saying they would meet in the clouds so that Naruto could test himself against another Jinchuriki. Naruto hadn't been afraid of being alone, but he had been warned, don't use the Kyuubi's chakra while I am away, just continue learning using the fire element. Of course, Naruto hadn't listened to those demands. He had promised, but he didn't follow through with it. Jiraiya couldn't force him to do what he didn't want to do. Besides that, Naruto had seals in place in case he lost control once more. He was currently walking through the land of hot of water, coming all the way from the land of tea. It was a long journey, but Naruto's thoughts came to a halt as he sensed something. He immediately twisted around. A large snake was hissing loudly as it slithered towards him in speed. Naruto stood still, watching it with indifference. The snake didn't stop. It continued to charge towards him. As it neared him, it lunged towards him, trying to smash him with its head. Naruto merely raised right hand, with its palm open. The snake slammed into the hand, coming to a complete halt. Naruto didn't move, not even a muscle. He might look a bit slim, but he had conditioned his body. He might not be in the standards of someone like Guy, but he could hold his own in terms of physical strength. Naruto ignored the hissing snake and looked up. Orochimaru, he said, seeing the snake Sannin, standing atop of the snake with a wide grin, hands folded across his chest. Naruto should be afraid of Orochimaru. There was no question that the Sannin was a powerful shinobi, and not someone who should be taken lightly. But Naruto wasn't afraid. He was merely curious. What did the snake want with him? He was getting guests these days. First it was Itachi and now it was this snake. It couldn't be any good if someone like Orochimaru had to come himself. Their last encounter hadn't been a good one. He had nearly died after facing Kabuto. Orochimaru looked at Naruto with interest. The blonde's hair had truly grown and a bit wild. But that interested him was the way he dressed. It was a bit like Madara, but the armor didn't have shoulder plates, and the blonde wore a crimson shirt, and with gloves that matched that color. You could hardly ignore the Uzumaki symbol on his chest and around the metal plates. You have taken quite the transformation, Naruto-kun. Naruto shook his head. This has always been in design, Orochimaru, there was just never an appropriate time to wear it. As you can see, it does draw some inspiration from a rather infamous Uchiha. The blonde explained lightly. Orochimaru laughed. I didn't take you for a history fan, not to mention Uchiha. Naruto shrugged. But history is origins, Orochimaru. In some way or the other, our pasts are what shape our futures. I'm not a fan of the Uchiha, but well, Madara had something I like about him. Oh, Orochimaru was immediately interested in what Naruto had to say. What is that? Nothing really. I was merely interested in your reaction, Naruto said with indifference. I hear you love yourself some Uchiha, the Sharingan to be precise. Well, to say love is corrupting the word. Let us just call it a perverse obsession. Kuku. Orochimaru laughed hysterically at the response from Naruto. I get the feeling that you have always been like this, Naruto-kun. Naruto raised an eyebrow. Well, that would certainly be an interesting development. He said carelessly. Yes, and it does draw me closer to trying to study more about you. I'd always dismissed you, but when we first met you seemed rather mysterious, and you never stood out, but I'm beginning to think that was by design, and dismissing you might have been an oversight on my behalf. Orochimaru actively searching what he can about him. Now that was a dangerous development. Naruto didn't want that, but he couldn't tell the Sannin to stop. I'm certain I will have nightmares about this, the blonde responded calmly. What can I do for you, Orochimaru. Don't be so hasty to end the conversation. We were getting along just fine, Orochimaru said with a laugh. You proudly wear the Uzumaki crest but yet, don't, have a connection with Uzu, that does set the mind racing. I'm sure the people in Konoha will be on guard if they see you boldly wearing the symbol of the Uzumaki. Well, I am Uzumaki, and anyone who says I can't wear the symbol of my clan is just being ridiculous. I doubt Konoha will even have a say about it when they also wear the symbol. Once more, Orochimaru laughed. So when are you going to Uzu to be with your people? Who doesn't love their clan? If they invite me, I will surely be interested in seeing my fellow clansmen, Naruto said. I see, you brought your little pet project with you. I was praying that you'd have consumed him by now. He is still training, Orochimaru said with a grin. You don't mind being a test subject, do you? With that armor, you should be at least a good punching bag. Not to mention you have the Kyuubi with you. I want to see how my Sasuke has grown. Sasuke isn't worth me using the Kyuubi's power. He is just a little child with some mental problems. Well, you two suit each other well. You both have loose screws up in your heads. Perhaps Sasuke has been suffering from the mental effects of his brother's genjutsu, Naruto said in a cold tone. I think I am beginning to like you, Naruto. Naruto shook his head. I'm afraid I don't swing that way. Orochimaru frowned. The blonde was mentally strong, unlike Sasuke. But truly, he was proving to be an interesting subject. If he does manage to survive here, Orochimaru wouldn't mind taking him back to the hideout. Sasuke, you can come out. The Uchiha flashed behind Naruto. You have trained your dog well, Orochimaru. I didn't think that you could train it better like this. Kuku, Orochimaru chuckled lightly. Sasuke-kun is more than that. Oh, I am very much aware what he means to you, Orochimaru. Naruto said with indifference. Sasuke stared at Naruto with an expressionless mask. This person had made him jealous of his growth. But he was here. He had trained hard under Orochimaru. He had abandoned all emotions and focused on his training. He was confident that he could beat him even with the power of the Kyuubi. This is rather interesting, isn't it, Naruto? Sasuke started in a calm tone, eyeing the blonde. He had yet to even activate his Sharingan. I guess you can say that, Naruto said. You do mean the fact that last time we stood like this I was chasing after you and now you are the one who has run after me? Yes, Sasuke said. Naruto shrugged. Well, I have never been the one good on chasing people. Admittedly, I don't really care what you do. Even if you strip down and bend down for Orochimaru to screw you, that isn't my problem. Naruto said indifferently. Nevertheless, Konoha has ordered that you be returned before you carry Orochimaru's children. And as a shinobi of the leaf, I must follow those orders. Sasuke didn't like those words. It was insulting to think of what Naruto was saying. But in the end, he ignored those words. Let us hope that the armor isn't just for show and you can actually fight. And I hope that you actually learned something, Naruto said. He clapped his hands together for a moment before, stretching his neck muscles. Come Uchiha, show me if you can really dance. That is some tough talk from someone I beat. You've never been able to beat me and there will be no change. In terms of arrogance, yes, you will win, Naruto said. Admittedly, you had more skills than I do, your sponsors liked you because of those skills and not to mention the Sharingan. Sasuke smirked. So you do admit that I was better than you? Yes, painfully so, Naruto said calmly. I am not the one to fail to recognize someone's skills when they are better. But of course, that was the past. Are you saying you are better than me now? Sasuke asked with narrowed eyes. He always did feel superior, but Naruto always had to undermine him. He always had to show that despite all his efforts, he could still get better. Sasuke had hated it. He had hated that someone without a bloodline could match him. Even when he was doing better, they'd always been a feeling that Naruto's wasn't really giving it his best. They'd always been a feeling that the blonde could do better than what he showed he could do. And that was always pissed him off. Naruto tilted his head to the side. Who knows? If you're still the same child who sees hatred whenever Itachi's name is mentioned, you can't defeat me. Sasuke glared. Sasuke-kun, Orochimaru called from the sides. Don't kill him. He could prove to be a very useful subject. Laughable, Naruto said, but he didn't look the least amused. The arrogance in Orochimaru to assume that Sasuke could kill him, it was mystifying. Orochimaru, this arrogance of yours is the reason you actually believed that you could destroy the hidden leaf. What a miserable person you are. You lost the use of your hands in your arrogance and had to crawl to Tsunade looking for help. Please don't incite Sasuke to do something reckless. I will gouge his eyes out, have them crystallized and then put them on display in my throne room. Kukukukukuku. Orochimaru laughed. Big words, Naruto-kun. I can see why Sensei replaced me with you, the snake grinned. Do it, Sasuke. A bit annoyed at being commanded like that, but Sasuke still dashed towards Naruto. The blonde didn't move but just watched him with sharpened eyes. Sasuke reached Naruto and unsheathed his sword. He swung it across Naruto's chest in blinding speed. Naruto took a step backwards slightly and watched as sparks flew with the blade running through his chest metal plate. He held out his right hand and summoned the sword of the Thunder God from a storage seal on a plate around his waist. Seeing the sword, Sasuke encased his own sword with lightning and swung it towards Naruto. The sword clashed with Naruto's, creating a huge spark of lightning. He attempted to push the blonde backwards but Naruto didn't budge. Not even an inch. Sasuke jumped back while flipping his sword to his sheath. The sound of birds chirping invaded his ears as he summoned lightning on his right hand. He pointed towards Naruto. Chidori Iso. A lightning spear spread through quickly towards Naruto. The blonde reacted instinctively by shifting his body to his left while positioning his sword to block the jutsu. It managed to graze through his right shoulder before Naruto pushed it away with his sword. Sasuke cancelled his jutsu and burst towards Naruto. He flipped several times as he neared and tried to slam his right foot above Naruto's head. The blonde took a step back to avoid the kick. Sasuke managed to flip once more and touch the ground with his hands, his body positioned upside down. He quickly bent his arms before going airborne. Kaden. Great Fireball no Jutsu. Sasuke breathed in before exhaling a large fireball. The flames sped towards Naruto quickly. Sasuke was left puzzled when the flames suddenly disappeared into thin air as if they had just burned out. When Naruto flashed in front of him while he was still in midair, Sasuke activated his fully matured Sharingan and saw the incoming punch directed at his chest. He quickly flipped, twisted above the blonde. He stretched out his hands and touched Naruto's shoulders before using them to propel himself further away. He twisted around in flash and tried to kick Naruto on the back of his head. Naruto held out his right hand and gathered wind around the tip of his middle finger. He gathered enough chakra for the Uchiha to even spot the chakra build up. Wind bullet. Sasuke still couldn't react swiftly to avoid the bullet that sped through in the blink of an eye and collided with his chest. There was so much force behind it and Sasuke felt the air leave him for a moment before he was sent flying backwards. He recovered quickly by flipping once before landing down. A second later, Naruto crashed in front of him, driving his fist towards his chest. Uchiha twisted anti-clockwise while unsheathing his sword. He did not swing it but rather raised his left leg and tried slamming his right foot on Naruto's gut. The blonde caught his kick with his left hand. Sasuke smirked before swinging his sword in a slash aimed just above Naruto's shoulders. The blonde reacted by leaping backwards and then did a sudden pull on the foot he'd caught. The sudden movements made him lose his balance and sword just flashed past Naruto's face. Naruto pulled Sasuke towards him while still holding him. He slammed a brutal wind-enhanced punch on the Uchiha's chest. Sasuke felt something crack before spitting out blood. His whole upper body ached as Naruto did a quick twist before hitting him on the forehead with a powerful kick. Sasuke was sent flying backwards. He crashed into the ground and laid there for a couple of moments. He clutched his chest for a moment before getting up. He cursed as he saw Naruto jumping into the air before kicking a dark orb of flames towards him. His Sharingan could see the wind around the blonde's foot. The speed in which he kicked the ball was just ridiculous. More so the speed of the flames. Yet, Sasuke straightened his body and shifted to the right a bit. He felt intense flames burning his chest as the ball sped past him. It was only for less than a second and yet it managed to burn his shirt around his chest. Sasuke didn't get to thank his Sharingan when he felt the tremendous explosion of the flames and the heat it produced. Naruto had appeared before him, stabbing his sword towards his chest. Sasuke managed to move his body a hit to avoid it, but the lightning sword pierced through his shoulder. Naruto didn't step there. He slammed a small Rasengan on Sasuke's chest, sending the Uchiha flying backwards. Shit! Sasuke mentally shouted after crashing. He was seriously hurting. At this point, Naruto was going to shatter his ribcage. He couldn't allow that to continue. His eyes widened slightly as sensed a heat wave coming towards him. Sasuke gritted his teeth before activating his level 2 cursed seal. The flames touched him and exploded into a massive cloud of flames. The Uchiha burst out of the flames with wings behind him. Seeing the Uchiha's form, Naruto shook his head. How unsightly, he said. Then again, this is how far you are willing to go for power. I don't want to hear that from a Jinchuriki. Naruto shrugged indifferently. I didn't seal the Kyuubi within me, he said. Doesn't matter. Sasuke's wings flapped before he vanished from sight. He appeared behind Naruto and kicked the blonde on his back. Naruto flipped several times before twisting around. He landed gracefully. Sasuke was right above him, a Chidori on his hand. Naruto summoned a Rasengan and slammed it towards Sasuke's jutsu. When the jutsus collided, there was an explosion of chakra and lightning. Seeing that he was being pushed back, Naruto jumped backwards to create some distance between him and the Uchiha. But Sasuke cut the distance in the blink of an eye. The Uchiha attempted to kick him straight on his face, but Naruto crossed both his hands, and the kick hit the defense. Naruto's body slid through the ground considerably.